The House will be in order. The first order of business is roll call. The clerk will unlock the machine. The members will mark themselves present. Has every member recorded their presence? The clerk will lock the machine and record the roll. Roll call shows 67 present, 3 absent, excused. A quorum being present, the House is ready for business. The second order of business is prayer by the chaplain, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Our prayer, as usual, will be led by Pastor Tom Doherty, and the pledge will be led by Christina Nelson, one of our House pages. Will the guests in the gallery please rise?
The passage of Scripture today is by the Apostle Paul in 1 Timothy 4:7. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, thank you for a great example of the Apostle Paul in the Bible. Through so much turmoil and persecution, he stood his ground and accomplished so much for you. Lord, these folks today have fought hard, and seeing positive results come from this great year. Thank you, dear Lord, for the success that has come. We are grateful, O Lord, that these leaders have persevered through another session and leave for a needed break. Give them some quality times with their family and friends, and bring them back next January with an attitude of positive anticipation of great things that will take place. Heavenly Father, it is an honor and a privilege to call on you each and every day to lead our state. We finish this session with thanksgiving to you, O Lord. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The House will now advance to the third order of business, approval of the journal. The House is at the third order.
April 4th, 2013. Mr. Speaker, will your Committee on Judiciary, Rules, and Administration report that we have read and approved the House Journal of the 87th Legislative Day and recommend same be adopted as corrected. Moved by Wills, seconded by Burgoyne.
You've all heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion carries and the report is adopted. The House will now advance to the fourth order of business, consideration of messages from the Governor and the Senate. The House is at the fourth order. Gentleman from 14.
Mr. Speaker, point of personal privilege.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, there's a couple of bills that we need to do today. One of them is House Bill 345, and the other one is Senate Bill 1200. There's not a suspension calendar for those in front of you, so I would like you to write that down. Look online. 1200 was not online earlier, but it should be in a few minutes. Be sure you look at those because we're going to suspend and do those in a few minutes. Again, House Bill 345 and Senate Bill 1200. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
House is at the fourth order.
From the Office of the Governor, April 3rd, 2013. Dear Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to advise you that I have signed today and am transmitting to the Secretary of State the following House Bill to wit. House Bill 124. As always, C.L. Butch Otter, Governor of Idaho. From the Office of the Governor, April 4th, 2013. Dear Mr. Speaker, I hereby advise you that I have transmitted to the Office of the Secretary of State, with my approval, the following House Bill to wit. House Bill 315, within the time prescribed by law, the same having arrived in the Office of the Governor at the hour of 8:30 a.m. on March 29th, 2013. This legislation is a good and important start towards the goal of eliminating the personal property tax in Idaho. However, it is only a start, and I would strongly encourage the legislature to continue to work the work of relieving all Idaho businesses of this burdensome and onerous tax. It is my sincere hope that the legislature will revisit the issue in the interest of further stimulating our economy and creating more career opportunities for our citizens. For now, please accept my thanks for working through a complex and potentially divisive issue for delivering this legislation to my desk. It is a welcome relief for most Idaho businesses. As always, C.L. Butch Otter, Governor of Idaho. From the Office of the Governor, April 2nd, 2013. Dear Mr. Speaker, I hereby advise you that I have transmitted to the Office of the Secretary of State with my approval the following House bill to wit, House Bill 192, within the time prescribed by law, the same having arrived in the Office of the Governor at the hour of 3:16 p.m. on March 27, 2013. The intent of this bill is laudable, and I appreciate the opportunity for citizens to improve their self-protection skills in a safe, controlled setting in order to obtain an enhanced concealed carried weapons permit. However, it is important to note, as I signed the legislation, that this fiscal note was inadequate to address the actual costs that the Idaho Transportation Department and the Idaho State Police will face on its implementation. The agencies estimate they will be required to shoulder unfunded one-time costs totaling more than $80,000, in particular burden with our budgets already so close to the bone, plus ongoing annual costs of more than $1,500 to integrate this new permit into existing computer systems. Once again, I have no problem with all the legislation, but I encourage the legislature to be more forthcoming and thorough in its assessment of the fiscal impact of this legislative actions on our state agencies and ultimately on our taxpayers. As always, C.L. Butch Otter, Governor of Idaho. April 3rd, 2013. Mr. Speaker, I transmit herewith enrolled Senate Bill 1196 for the signature of the Speaker. Novak, Secretary of the Senate.
Senate Bill 1196 will be signed by the Speaker and returned to the Senate.
April 3rd, 2013. Mr. Speaker, I return here with House Bills 343 and House Concurrent Resolution 36, which have passed the Senate. Novak, Secretary of the Senate.
House Bill 343 and House Concurrent Resolution number 36 will be referred to the Judiciary Rules and Administration Committee for enrolling. The House will now advance to the fifth order of business, report of standing committees. The House is at the fifth order.
April 4th, 2013. Mr. Speaker, will your Committee on Judiciary Rules and Administration report that we have printed House Bill 345, Wills Chairman.
House Bill 345 will be filed for second reading.
April 4th, 2013. Mr. Speaker, will your Committee on Judiciary Rules and Administration report that we have enrolled House Bill 206 as amended in the Senate, House Bill 221 as amended in the Senate, House Bill 259 as amended in the Senate, House Bill 98 as amended in the Senate, House Bill 120 as amended in the Senate, and House Bill 343 and House Concurrent Resolution 36. Wills Chairman.
House Bills 206 as amended in the Senate, 221 as amended in the Senate, 259 as amended in the Senate, 98 as amended in the Senate, House Bill 120 as amended in the Senate, House Bill 343 and House Concurrent Resolution 36 will all be signed by the Speaker and sent to the Senate for the signature of the Senate President. Without objection, the House will now advance to the 10th order of business. Second reading of bills and joint resolutions. The House is at the 10th order.
From the Senate, Senate Bill 1040 as amended by Education Committee regarding education.
Senate Bill 1040 as amended will be filed for third reading. The House will now advance to the 11th order of business. Third reading of bills and joint resolutions. The House is at the 11th order and will have under consideration Senate Concurrent Resolution 103. The gentleman from District 12.
Mr. Speaker, I'd ask for unanimous consent to dispense with further reading of Senate Concurrent Resolution 103.
You've all heard the unanimous consent request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, the good gentleman has the floor to open the debate.
Mr. Speaker, good members of the House, the purpose of this well, let me start off. First say, you heard from the gentleman from 15 yesterday, the drones are coming. The purpose of this legislation is to encourage Idaho colleges and universities to prepare for a proposal on behalf of the state of Idaho to be selected as one of 6 Federal Aviation Administration's unmanned aircraft system test sites. Of course, this would include INL, the Idaho National Laboratory. Idaho is uniquely positioned with the Idaho National Laboratory and its nearly 900 miles of critical infrastructure test range, its Center for Advanced Modeling and Simulation, and its Center for Advanced Energy Studies, which already house significant scientific resources that may be utilized for the test site. A test site selection could have tremendous positive impact on Idaho. Good members, when I ran with the, I wanted to create jobs for Idaho. This is an excellent opportunity. Again, 900 square miles of desert in Idaho to establish a drone location, create good jobs, good employment. I think it's a great opportunity for Idaho. It does carry a one-time cost of about $25,000 for the RFP. Again, for job creation, I'd ask for your green light. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Gentleman from 20.
Debate in favor of the bill.
Gentleman has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen of the House, this is, a lot of you seen that my name was on this bill, and the reason I didn't carry it is when I got sick there for a few days, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to be here to carry it, and so I'd asked a good representative to do so. But I just wanted to be able to stand up and let everybody know that my support of this bill. I know that there's a little bit of reluctancy in some ways when we start talking about the drone issue and that type of thing. But, you know, the INL has been testing unmanned aircraft for, I think, probably around 50 years. They're very good at it. This is a really important issue. And I think as far as job creation in the state of Idaho, this can really help us out as long as we do have those protections that we did put into place yesterday. And I just wanted to make that known that I'm very supportive of this bill.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Hearing none, the debate is closed. The question is, shall Senate Concurrent Resolution 103 pass the House? The clerk will unlock the machine and the members will cast their votes. Has every member voted? Barbieri. Does any member wish to change his vote? The clerk will lock the machine and record the roll. The roll call shows 62 aye, 5 nay, 3 absent, excused. Senate Concurrent Resolution 103 has passed the House. Is there correction to title? Hearing none, the title is approved, and Senate Concurrent Resolution number 103 will be returned to the Senate.
Mr.
Gentleman
Speaker,
from District 14.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the House return to the 7th order of business.
You've all heard the unanimous consent request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, the House will return to the 7th order of business.
Mr. Speaker.
Motions, memorials, and resolutions. Gentleman from 14.
Mr. Speaker, I move that all rules interfering with the immediate consideration of House Bill 345 be suspended, making possible the immediate consideration of House Bill 345.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
You've all heard the motion. It's a non-debatable motion and requires 2/3 of the body or 47 votes for passage. The clerk will unlock the machine and the members will cast their votes. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change his vote? The clerk will lock the machine and record the roll. The roll call shows 67 ayes, 0 nay, 3 absent, excused. More than 2/3 having voted in the affirmative. The rules are suspended, and the House will have under consideration House Bill 345.
Mr.
The lady
Speaker.
from District 25.
Thank you. I'd ask unanimous consent to dispense with further reading of House Bill 345.
You've all heard the unanimous consent request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, the good lady from District 25 is recognized to open debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a year-end surplus eliminator. It's going to take a lot of faith on all of our parts because at this point there is no surplus to eliminate. But it will be in place should that happen. Any unanticipated surplus in excess of $20 million will be automatically put into the budget stabilization account. For those of you who are new here, we had a marvelous budget stabilization account at one time, and thank goodness for that, and we pretty well emptied it out Last year, we were able to put some back in it, and then the economy strengthened for a moment, and we hit that 4% and automatically triggered $25 million. So with this in mind, this is this year, and I do want you to know that in order to hit our target budget for this year, we have to have 2.7% income. We are tracking right now at 2.4. However, April and June are the months that we count on. You will get the figures for this month Friday, Mr. Speaker, but we don't want to hang around for that. Trust me, you can check online for that. So with that, if there's 20 over the 79 million needed, if at the end of this year, then it will automatically go into the savings. And we are hanging on to the 20. We do know already we have 15 million in fire suppression to pay for at this point. So the 20 would be for the supplementals. So I'd ask your support on this bill. Thank you so much.
Is there further debate? Hearing none, the debate is closed. The question is, shall House Bill 345 pass the House? The clerk will unlock the machine and the members will cast their votes. Has every member voted? Representative Chu. Does any member wish to change his vote? The clerk will lock the machine and record the roll. The roll call shows 67 ayes, 0 nay, 3 absent, excused. House Bill 345 has passed the House. Is there correction to title? Hearing none, the title is approved and House Bill number 345 will be transmitted to the Senate. The gentleman from District 14.
Mr. Speaker, we're waiting for one more bill from the Senate, which is Senate Bill 1200. We would also like to take a few minutes to have a quick caucus both for the minority and the majority party. And so with that, Mr. Speaker, I'd ask that you put the House at ease subject to call of the chair.
Before placing the question, is there any announcements? Gentleman from 6.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minority Caucus will meet on recess.
Gentleman from 22.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And just to reaffirm what the good gentleman said, the majority party will caucus immediately on recess for a short caucus. So please hurry up to the room. Don't take 20 minutes to get there because we'll be done by the time you get there.
Yeah, it's our hope to be back in the saddle here in 20, 30 minutes, not more than. So the House is at ease subject to call the chair.
Welcome to Idaho in Session, Legislature Live. Idaho in Session is sponsored by the Idaho State Broadcasters Association, the J.A. and Catherine Albertson Foundation, Union Pacific Foundation, Idaho Association of Counties, Idaho Cable Telecommunications Association, Association of Idaho Cities, and your contributions to the Idaho Public Television Endowment. Welcome to Idaho in Session, Legislature Live. Idaho in Session is sponsored by the Idaho State Broadcasters Association, the J.A. and Catherine Albertson Foundation, Union Pacific Foundation, Idaho Association of Counties, Idaho Cable Telecommunications Association, Association of Idaho Cities, and your contributions to the Idaho Public Television Endowment. Welcome to Idaho in Session, Legislature Live. Idaho in Session is sponsored by the Idaho State Broadcasters Association, the J.A. and Catherine Albertson Foundation, Union Pacific Foundation, Idaho Association of Counties, Idaho Cable Telecommunications Association, Association of Idaho Cities, and your contributions to the Idaho Public Television Endowment. Welcome to Idaho in Session, Legislature Live. Idaho in Session is sponsored by the Idaho State Broadcasters Association, the J.A. and Catherine Albertson Foundation, Union Pacific Foundation, Idaho Association of Counties, Idaho Cable Telecommunications Association, Association of Idaho Cities, and your contributions to the Idaho Public Television Endowment. Welcome to Idaho in Session, Legislature Live. Idaho in Session is sponsored by the Idaho State Broadcasters Association, the J.A. and Catherine Albertson Foundation, Union Pacific Foundation, Idaho Association of Counties, Idaho Cable Telecommunications Association, Association of Idaho Cities, and your contributions to the Idaho Public Television Endowment.
games did Pool G play last night? LA, were you there? You know what? I left at 10:15. I hurt your feelings because I left? Oh, man.
Called me a gomer.
That's a, Andy Griffith show.
Yeah.
Who called you a goober? That was like a compliment.
Thompson called me a goober.
He is just so offensive sometimes. He takes this brotherly love way too far.
I'm learning it from...
The House will be in order. Gentleman from 14.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous Okay.
The House is at the 7th order. Without objection, the House will return to the 4th order of business. Consideration of messages from the Governor and the Senate. The House is at the 4th order.
April 4th, 2013. Mr. Speaker, I transmit here with Senate Bill 1200, which has passed the Senate. Novak, Secretary of the Senate.
Senate Bill 1200 will be filed for first reading. Without objection, the House will now advance to the 8th order of business, introduction, first reading, and reference of bills and joint resolutions. The House is at the 8th order.
From the Senate, Senate Bill number 1200 by Finance Committee, an act relating to public schools, stating fund sources for the appropriation to the Public Schools Educational Support Program for fiscal year 2014, appropriating monies for the transfer to the Public School Income Fund for fiscal year 2014, appropriating monies to the Public Schools Educational Support Program Division of Administrators for fiscal year 2014, to the Public Schools Educational Support Program Division of Teachers for fiscal year 2014, appropriating money to the Public Schools Educational Support Program Division of Operations for fiscal year 2014, appropriating monies to the Public Schools Educational Support Program Division of Children's Programs for fiscal year 2014, to the Public Schools Educational Support Program Division of Facilities for fiscal year 2014, providing the necessary funds for the bond levy equalization program, limiting the amount of revenue distributed to the general fund, appropriating monies to the Public School Educational Support Program Division of Educational Services for the Deaf and Blind for fiscal year 2014, and amending sections 33-1004A and 33-1004E to adjust minimum instructional staff salary, and directing that certain information be compiled by the State Department of Education by the dual enrollment program, directing that certain information be compiled by the State Department of Education on safe school environments, providing dedicated fund reapportionment for fiscal year 2014, and granting the authority to transfer appropriations among 5 divisions of the Public Schools Educational Support Program.
Senate Bill 1200 will be filed for the second reading. Without objection, the House will return to the 7th order of business. Motions, memorials, and resolutions. The House is at the 7th order. The gentleman from District 14.
Mr. Speaker, I move that all rules interfering with the immediate consideration of Senate Bill 1200 that they be suspended, making possible the immediate consideration of Senate Bill 1200.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
You've all heard the motion. It's a non-debatable motion and requires 2/3 of the body or 47 votes for passage. The clerk will unlock the machine and the members will cast their votes. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change his vote? The clerk will lock the machine and record the roll. The roll call shows 67 ayes, 0 nay, 3 absent and excused, more than 2/3 having voted in the affirmative. The rules are suspended, and the House will have under consideration Senate Bill 1200. The gentleman from District 30.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of Senate Bill 1200 be dispensed with.
You've all heard the unanimous consent request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, the good gentleman from District 30 is recognized to open the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen, this truly is the going home bill. This is the fiscal year 2014 appropriation for public schools, including $1,308,365,400 in general funds, $74,567,600 in dedicated funds, $215,223,500 in federal funds, for a total of $1,598,165,500. The totals for this budget include a 2.2% increase in general fund and overall increase of 2% for all funds. The budget keeps up with estimated enrollment growth of 91 support units. The budget funds 33 additional support units, 58 excess units in the base. We heard the minimum salary needed to be increased, so the budget does that by increasing the minimum salary from $35,500 to $31,000, 1.6% increase. This budget increases discretionary funds by 1.5% up to $20,000 per support unit. We also heard that technology was essential, and this budget provides $10,400,000 for classroom technology and wireless infrastructure, and provides $3 million for technology pilot projects that is outlined in Senate Bill 1199. Also, this budget returns $6,517,500 to facilities maintenance and appropriates $17,400,000 for the bond levy equalization program. Of the one-time $33.9 million line item recommended by the governor, this appropriation uses $21 million for professional development and achievement awards outlined in Senate Bill 1199 and $13.4 million in technology. Regarding salary-based apportionment, the total amount of funding for salaries is still 4.4% below the amount appropriated in 2009. This is at the same time the total number of students has increased by over 3%. Lastly, regarding the big picture, the general fund appropriation at $1.308 billion is still $110 million below the fiscal year 2009 appropriation. Mr. Speaker, this is a collaborative effort. It's a bipartisan support budget supported by the Superintendent of Public Instruction, Idaho School Administrators, the School Board Association, and the Idaho Education Association. And with that, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the House, I ask for your green light.
Is there further debate? Gentleman from District 17.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To speak in opposition.
Gentleman has the floor.
I don't think that this is a happy going home bill for many of our kids and our property taxpayers. And the reason I say that is because I think the appropriation is too low. It's only a 2.2% increase, yet our people, our constituents, are telling us around the state that the public schools need more money. Last March 12th, 36 of 41 school districts passed levies and bonds totaling $107.8 million that our constituents were willing to pay for the public schools. And these levies and bonds were passed with in many cases, with very high percentages. Blackfoot, 72% for $1.975 million. Idaho Falls, 79%, $6.8 million. Jerome, $1.3 million with a 67% approval. Coeur d'Alene, a $27 million bond with a 2/3 majority. Post Falls, 68% with an $8.5 million for an $8.5 million two-year levy. Genesee, 68% for a one-year $935,000 levy. And the list goes on, and it's you can go to March 12th, Idaho Education News, which has a full and complete list. We need to do better for public education. We need to do better for the property taxpayers around this state. And it isn't the evidence for that is the elections. The elections in March of 12, May of 12, August of 12, 29 out of 30 passed, and then in March of 13 with the 36 out of 41. I hope that next year we can do a lot better. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Hearing none, would the good gentleman from District 30 care to close the debate?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, this is the best budget possible within our means of this fiscal year, and we appreciate your support as we move forward, and thank you for that support.
Thank you. The debate is closed. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1200 pass the House? The clerk will unlock the machine and the members will cast their votes. Has every member voted? Representative Mendive. Does any member wish to change his vote? The clerk will lock the machine and read the pairs.
Mr. Speaker, I have a pair at the desk. Representative Trujillo votes aye, and Representative Crane votes nay.
Roll call shows 57 aye, 11 nay, 2 absent excused. Senate Bill 1200 has passed the House. Is there a correction to title? Hearing none, the title is approved, and Senate Bill 1200 will be returned to the Senate. Good gentleman from District 14.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the roll call used for the suspension of rules on Senate Bill 1200 now be used for the suspension of rules on Senate Bill 1240 as amended, making possible the immediate consideration of Senate Bill 1240 as amended.
1040.
How about 1040? I was trying to see if I could get him.
Mr. Speaker, I object.
Mr. Speaker, I move that all rules interfering with the immediate consideration of Senate Bill 1040 as amended be suspended, making possible the immediate consideration of Senate Bill 1040 as amended.
I second that, Mr. Speaker.
You've all heard the motion.
Mr. Speaker.
Good gentleman from 6.
Mr. Speaker, I request a point of order.
State the point.
The point is that we are using a vote on one bill to suspend rules on a second bill. I believe we truly require a 2/3 majority to suspend rules on a bill, and therefore the motion to use a previous vote is out of order.
House be at ease. Consult with the parliamentarian. House be in order. Gentleman from 14.
Mr. Speaker, to be clear, I move that all rules interfering with the immediate consideration of Senate Bill 1040 as amended be suspended, making possible the immediate consideration of Senate Bill 1040 as amended.
Mr. Speaker, I second that motion.
You've all heard the motion. It's a non-debatable motion and requires 2/3 of the body or 47 votes for passage. The clerk will unlock the machine and the members will cast their votes. Has every member voted? Malik, Patterson, Hartkin, Eskridge. Does any member wish to change his vote? The clerk will lock the machine and record the roll. The roll call shows 56 aye, 11 nay, 3 absent, excused, more than 2/3 having voted in the affirmative. The rules are suspended and the House will have under consideration Senate Bill 1040 as amended. Good lady from District 9.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask for unanimous consent that we suspend with further reading of Senate Bill 1040 as
You've
amended.
all heard the unanimous consent request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, the good lady from District 9 is recognized to open the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, this is the bill we've been waiting for, the very last one of the session. So what this bill does is gives our local elected school boards the ability to manage the major part of their budget, similar to what the cities and the counties and other public employers have. Unfortunately, financial obligations sometimes outweigh the income, and we've just heard the problems that happen and the supplemental levies that happen. So this is to try to get ahead of that a little bit and keep the school districts whole. There are two triggers in this legislation. It's an either-or thing. The first one, both parties must agree before this can happen, before any salary can be reduced or their contracts shortened. Also, the second one is they can reduce the length of the contract, but first those districts have to analyze carefully what they receive from the state for the salaries. If they are currently or are going to pay their teachers above what the state reimburses, then they will be able to reduce those salaries to what the state gives them. So if you would like to follow this, the first thing it does is allows a district to issue a letter of intent to a renewable contract teacher for the next year. Excuse me. This can be issued anytime during May, and it also can be issued to those new teachers, but it has to be issued, the contract, by July the 1st. The letters will not state the specific duration of the contract, the salaries or the benefits, but it will let those renewable contract teachers know that they will have a position, and they will be able to do that with the other teachers as well. Now, across the state, we are having severe problems, as all of you know, especially in those smaller districts. And I would like to give you an example of one of those, and that's the school district of Mackay. There are a little over 100 students in Mackay from kindergarten to 12th grade. They only have 16 teachers as it is. They cannot reduce teachers any further to give those kids an education. They are taking advantage of all the technology they possibly can. They are a 5-star school, so they're obviously doing a very good job with what they have. One of the major problems they have there is their private property base is only 3%. They have a huge, huge amount of federally controlled land there that they cannot tax. Now, there used to be something called the 25% fund, and that was back when we used to manage the forests and cut the trees. So 25% of all the stumpage that was cut went to schools and roads, to the counties. And with all the ensuing lawsuits and the unmanagement of the forest, unfortunately, those funds went away. So a few years ago, Congress decided to pass a bill called Craig-Wyden, and it's now called Secure Rural Schools. And that gave money to the schools and to the counties for those purposes of which the 25% funds used to come. Well, now the federal government has decided that they are no longer going to give them that money. They actually had given money, and now they want it back. This is just another example, like we talked about, of Wyoming and the mineral leases. So this school district, along with many other small districts, are in very, very dire straits. And this bill is one way to help them get out of those dire straits. They've already done a levy, a 2-year levy, and that is for $150,000. Now, in Boise, maybe that doesn't sound like very much, but in a small district like this, it is a huge amount of money. They made the promise to their taxpayers that they would reduce the budget by $150,000. That was before they knew they were going to lose the secure rural school money. So this is just one example of districts facing problems, and this is a way to help those districts overcome that. And I would like to open debate. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Good lady from District 18.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate against the bill.
The lady has the floor.
I have stood before this body numerous times this session, and I've asked you to amend or to set aside a bill or to wait. But today I'm asking you to vote no on a bill. This bill guts teachers' contracts. And permission to reference another bill?
Without objection, the lady may reference other bills.
Thank you. Earlier this session, I supported and we passed Senate Bill 1146, which made it easier for a school district to declare a financial emergency. And if a district declares a financial emergency, they may lower teachers' salaries and/or increase or decrease contract days. Senate Bill 1146 gives districts all the flexibility they need and had the support of all the stakeholders. This bill allows districts to issue letters of intent in May and later issue contracts on July 1st or no later than July 1st. Now, you know teachers. They're your wives, they're your daughters, they're your sons, your colleagues, and your neighbors. And this is a fairness issue. Teachers deserve to know how much they're going to make in the next year, and they need to know how many days they're going to be under contract. And they need to know it in a timely basis so that they can actually look for a new job if this doesn't work for them. They need to be able to apply to another school district or to another state. If they wait until July 1st, if that's when they actually see what's going to be on their contract, it's too late. Many school districts have closed their application process, and they've already done the hiring. I want to give you just a possible scenario. You could receive a letter of intent in May saying you would be rehired, and on July 1st, you receive your contract and find out that your salary has been lowered and you are now teaching 20 more days for the same salary. But at this point, it's simply too late to apply for additional job. Nobody's arguing that districts need more flexibility. We've given them more flexibility in a use it or lose it. We've provided a bill that makes it easier to apply for financial emergencies when they're in trouble. And teachers work with your communities when that's the case. They have a contract with the community. That's why they're different than other state employees. They work under contract, but they have a love for your students and a love of the community, and they're under contract. We've already provided the flexibility to address a financial emergency, and yes, it requires some paperwork, but if you're going to lower somebody's salary, that paperwork, that discussion, that work should be in place. If we continue to erode teachers' rights and contracts, I'm worried they're going to become no more than indentured servants. And this is a road we don't want to go down. We want our best and brightest to enter the profession. We want them to stay in Idaho. I've watched my children leave the profession or leave the state, and I don't want it to happen to others. Please vote no on this bill. It's critical.
Is there further debate? Gentleman from 16.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will not be voting for Senate Bill 1040 today. Among my reasons, Mr. Speaker, may I refer to other legislation?
Without objection, the gentleman may refer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Among my reasons is a statement that was made by the good floor sponsor, that across this state we are having severe problems. And the debate that was given on the last bill by the good gentleman from 17. I ended up voting for 1200 as I voted for its predecessor, saying that it was about the best we could do, or the best we could get through this legislature. But that best isn't good enough if we are to believe this legislation. And so on the one hand, we pass a budget, and the representation is, it is good enough. And on the other hand, we have a bill like this that says it's so bad we have to engage in these emergency procedures. I'm not a member of a school board, and I'm not a teacher, and I've never worked in K-12 education. So I have to rely on what others tell me about education to understand it, and I don't understand that. The thing that really concerns me about all of this is I think we're now in a position where the likelihood is take a look in your local school district, look at the teachers you've got, and understand this is the best teaching staff you will ever have in our lifetimes. It isn't going to get better. It's going to get worse. Why is it going to get worse? We're hanging out a sign with this and other bills that says this is not a good profession to go into. This is not a profession that is going to treat you fairly, that is going to compensate you the way you, with the education you have and the talents you have, are going to be able to be compensated in a different kind of profession and a different kind of occupation. And it's not the kind of environment in which we're going to be able to say to people from other states, please come to Idaho. We have a good education system, we compensate people well, and we treat them fairly. Please come to Idaho and make your career here. Now, I've said it before, but I think it bears repeating. You go to a small town in Idaho to be a teacher, and because of financial exigency or because you don't get along with the superintendent or the principal, you lose your job. You lose more than your job. You lose your home, you lose your friends, and in many cases, you lose your relatives. Because to become reemployed, you will have to leave the community and go hundreds, perhaps, of miles to find another job. It has never been my position that whether we're talking about the private or public sector, people ought to be overcompensated or that people ought to receive contracts that are sweetheart contracts for the worker. There is an economic reality to me that underlies what we do in education and in everything else. And the economic reality is if you want a job done well, you're not going to escape a very fundamental economic principle. There's got to be adequate compensation. And adequate compensation includes providing some measure of contractual protection to teachers who find themselves working in small districts, in small communities, in rural areas, who have no safety net for their way of life in our small communities other than these contracts. This legislation comes substantially out of Proposition 1. When is this legislature going to start listening to the people who elected us? I know, I hear it said, well, the people didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know what they were voting on. If that's the case, then the people who voted for me didn't know who they were voting for. They didn't understand the issues. You know, if we believe in democracy on some level, we have to accept the word of the people. There are some mechanical problems with the bill, and I'd like to go over those. I don't mean to be picayunish, but I think these really matter to teachers. On page 3 of the bill at the bottom, lines 45 to 50. Unless otherwise negotiated and ratified by both parties pursuant to sections 33-1271 et sequitur, Idaho Code, for the 2013-2014 school year, standard teacher renewals for terms shorter in length than that stated in the current standard contract of renewable certified employees should be considered and implemented only after the district has determined that the salary-based apportionment reimbursement that it estimates it will receive for the 2013-14 school year is less, etc. Should be considered. I don't know what should means. Does should mean may, as in the board has discretion with respect to this determination? In making a determination that the salary-based apportionment reimbursement that it estimates it will receive is less? Or does it mean will or shall? That the board, that in other words, the board doesn't have the discretion to determine that. In fact, the facts say, the facts on the ground that a court can look at after the fact, that there had to be a decline with respect to the salary-based apportionment. Now, we just passed legislation the other day to say that what we say on the floor of this House and what we say on the floor of the Senate and what we say outside, presumably, when it comes to statutory construction and interpretations by our Supreme Court doesn't count. And I voted for that. So I think almost all of us did. All of us did. When we draft legislation, a word like should is going to cause the courts a lot of problems. So I would just say this, the reason that this clause is important to teachers, as I hope it is important to you, is that we don't know, when we use a word like should, we don't know how the statute's going to be interpreted. At least I don't feel I know. There's another one of these, and it relates to the process of informal review. At the top of page 6 and at the bottom of page 8. Page 6, line 4. The board shall hold a single informal review for all impacted employees when a group of employees are laid off, reduced, or otherwise. What is an informal review? It doesn't say review, it doesn't say formal review, it says informal review. Again, I don't think I know, and I will tell you that in my opinion, I think this is a very critical issue for teachers to know the lay of the land, and for the school boards. How formal does an informal review have to be? How informal can it be? And that problem is repeated on page 8. Now, I know that it would be very easy for us to just dismiss in our minds and say those are picayunish little things. But if you're a teacher looking at your career and trying to figure out whether it makes sense for you to stay in the education field These kinds of things matter to you. There's another little structural problem with the bill that I regard as important. On page 6, lines 19 through 28, 33514, subsection B, says a Category 2 contract is for certificated personnel in the first and second years of continuous employment with the same school district. Upon the decision by a local school board not to reemploy the person for the following year, the certificated employee shall be provided a written statement of reasons for non-reemployment by no later than May 25. That's an important provision for a teacher. It tells a teacher that you are going to get reasons for non-reemployment by May 25, important on 2 counts. 1, it is our tradition in this state that you know why you're being let go so that you can contest it. And 2, it's going to be given to you by May 25 so that you've got a shot of getting another teaching job. But then it goes on to say no property right shall attach to a Category 2 contract, and therefore the employee shall not be entitled to a review by the local school board of the reasons or decision not to reemploy. If there is no property right, then the first part of that, saying that the teacher will get a list of reasons by May 25, the teacher can't enforce it. So what the first part gave, the second part takes away. Why would we do that? Why would we give the first part in the first instance and then just take it away with the next sentence? That makes no sense to me. Finally, I am hopelessly confused by the bill having a 33514 beginning on page 1 and a 33514 beginning on page 6. Page 1 being section 1 of the bill, the second 33514 being in section 4 of the bill. Now, one would think I could resolve that conflict by going to 2 subsequent sections of the bill. The emergency clause. Section 1, in section 7 of the bill on page 10, section 1 says essentially this is going to be in effect immediately. So the first 33514 is in effect immediately. And then section 7 says section 4 will be in effect effective July 1. And you say, well, so are we going to have both of these in effect on July 1, 2014? And so you go to page 6 of the bill. And you see that the second 33514 is to become effective July 14. If there is a repealer of the first 33514, it is, to me at least, at best, by implication rather than by an express provision. Again, what will be the interpretation the courts give us? Which will be in effect on which dates? Rather than simply saying one section is in effect from one date to another date and the other section picks up on July 1, 2014. That kind of express provision would make it abundantly clear for the courts what we're doing here. It doesn't exist in this bill. So for all of those reasons, I think, again, and I've said it many times, I don't like to be a broken record, but I think sometimes when there is an enthusiasm for things, the I's don't get dotted and the T's don't get crossed. And I understand that school districts have issues and problems. And I think I understand Why? The recession, our budget situation, and the things that this legislature does that makes it difficult for school districts to do its job. But I also think that if we believe that we can solve the problems of education by allowing the two most important aspects of education for our children to now be in the third or fourth year of this sort of hand-to-hand combat between the teachers and the school boards. These are the two folks that we need to have pulling together for education in Idaho. And we have, I think, through the passage perhaps of this bill today and other legislation, been feeding this conflict. The idea that the school boards can solve their problems on the backs of the teachers. Well, maybe they can solve some of their problems that way, but we really are throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Because as the quality of our teaching in Idaho declines, as I am afraid that it may under legislation like this, the one thing that the school boards have to have and that we have to have in order to have good education is going to be deteriorating, and that's our teachers. Because without our teachers, we cannot have a good educational system. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Gentleman from 14.
Mr. Speaker, point of personal privilege.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, the Senate committee waiting upon the House to notify us that they are done and ready to sine die just arrived. They didn't have time to wait super long. So they have notified us that they are adjourning sine die, and I just wanted the rest of you to know that, and I told them I would let you know.
Thank you, good gentleman. Is there further debate? Gentleman from 6.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also am going to oppose this bill. And I ask you all to think about why we're here. Why do we have this? Financial difficulties in Mackay, other places. So rather than appropriately to keep our rural schools secure, we cut taxes on businesses and the highest earning Idahoans. Let me just review a little bit over the last few years. In 2006, we had a tax cut called a shift, but actually it resulted in about an $85 million cut in receipts. Good deal. 2/3 of that went to corporations and second homeowners. The majority of that money was made up by sales tax increase, a regressive tax on Idahoans. 2012, last year, we gave another $35 million to the highest earning Idahoans. And this year, we gave $20 million tax cut to businesses. So I guess my question for you all is, when do the public schools reach the head of the line? When do they reach the head of the line and get served as our Constitution requires us to do? With this bill, and with the others that we have felt obligated to do, to give the elected officials on our school boards upper hand with their staffs, I see some bad results. I see bad results of this arbitrary policy. The first is lawsuits. I mean, that one over in Nampa about furloughs. You'll see that repeated lots of places throughout the state. The second is flight of teachers, and the good gentleman outlined what happens when we hang out a shingle that says, you know, we really don't think you deserve protections. And the last thing that I want you to think about is what happens when you box people into a corner, when you give them no way out. Well, they fight. And I think, and I hope I'm wrong, but I think we may see things that we haven't seen in decades, and that's school strikes. I ask you to seriously think about what you're doing to the public schools and the education of the children in your communities. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Lady from 17.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, the people's voice is important to me. And District 17, 5 months ago, for Prop 1 had voted no. The voters of the state of Idaho said no, so I'm saying no. Please join me. Many of us talked to our constituents at the doors and at the grocery stores. They called us and they emailed us. Please vote no. Thank you.
Further debate? Lady from 5.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a feeling there are some cars packed with the engines running. So now it becomes a question whether those cars run out of gas before I do. So we'll see. I think that the people who have debated and talked about how we recruit and retain good teachers raise what's probably the essence of the issue in this bill. I think all of us know how important it is to have a superb teacher in every single classroom, and yet we send them a message that they're really not at the top of our priority list at all. In some case, we're the result of good fortune. I've heard the gentleman from 32 talk about how he loved teaching so much he would do it without a paycheck. And I imagine being in his classroom was a splendid experience. I would have liked to have experienced it myself, but I'm about his age, so that wasn't something that happened. But here's a gentleman who is invested in his community. He's got family, he's got church, and as a result, the schools in his community were the beneficiary of that situation. The same with the lady from 35 talking about her daughter. I imagine there's somebody that's very dedicated to the community, and so the school districts benefit from that situation. During the introductory campaign, during the introductory comments, we heard about a 5-star school district. That probably is a result of teamwork from teachers, school board, administrators, and community, and it's a great accomplishment. But our message to the teachers there, who I assume were a big part of that accomplishment, is that we're just going to slick the skids so that it's easier for their salaries to be lowered to solve the problem, when it could be solved by that school district going through the steps of declaring financial emergency. So, how do we attract good teachers? I don't think through actions like this one. What's becoming the floor now is our state salary schedule. That's the floor. As long as a school district is able to do that, that's a trigger that allows them to, at will, change contracts, lower salaries, and so on. So take a look at that floor. An individual who has taught at least 13 years, has a master's degree plus 36 hours or a doctorate, gets $46,500. Now that's about $16,000 greater than the beginning pay. So what's your future? You can come in and get a salary of $30,500, work 13 years, get 66 hours of college credit, and get $16,000 more. How much does 66 hours of college credit cost? Over $20,000 out of your own pocket. We better hope that we have some potentially good teachers who are invested enough in their communities to stay here, because I think we're going to have a dickens of a time recruiting them with bills like this.
Is there further debate? Good lady from District 30.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to debate in favor of the bill.
Lady has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the comments that have been made, specifically the good gentlemen who have spoken of the need for our education system to be a priority in this state. I concur, and I thank you for your statements to that end. I believe it is. I believe that through the recession, public education was the last dollar cut and the first dollar restored. And that is one reason I stand in support of this bill. I want to do everything possible to preserve our public education system for the students of Idaho. Without that system, our teachers don't have any jobs. So we need to do what we can to preserve it. School boards have been given the responsibility to manage their districts, but they are unable to appropriately manage 80 to 90% of the state general funds that come because there is law restricting reduction of salaries. To me, that is like playing the piano and having 10 fingers available but being able to use only 1 or 2. You just can't get the job done in difficult times such as we have come through. We have cut programs. We have found energy efficiencies. We have cut administration. We have been forced to change benefits and increase deductibles. We have done everything possible to keep our districts solvent and preserve jobs. But you can only turn off so many lights, so many refrigerators, and so many computers, and still keep the building functional. There are only so many jobs you can cut. There are only so many programs you can cut before you have to ask yourself if what is left constitutes the education of a child. Now, some districts chose not to reduce expenses during the recession. Perhaps they had supplementals, perhaps they had federal forest funds, perhaps they had other options for income. That's why you see a public education budget now with a 2% increase and districts still needing to make cuts. If they're paying above the grid for salary-based apportionment, that money has to come from somewhere. And this gives districts the ability, particularly in situations where district teachers have agreed that this is the best, most fair solution. That happened in Mackay. I think we've seen a local example here recently where teachers voluntarily chose that as the option they would like, but law forbade them from doing that. As the Mackay district said, do you want us to cut, in the absence of being able to reduce contract days, would you like us to cut our math teacher or our English teacher? Those are the options available in some districts that are remaining. I believe that this bill actually does do a lot to preserve teacher contracts by aligning them with the fiscal year of the school district. And once the budget has gone through all of the extensive procedures that it has to go through, noticing, hearings, voting, etc., then the details of those contracts can be described and provided to teachers. In the interim, letters of intent can be issued for any teacher in the district, assuring them that there is a position available for them. But until a budget is set, how can the board responsibly promise an amount or a length if they don't have the financial capacity to guarantee that? I ask your support of Senate Bill 1040 as amended. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Gentleman from District 33.
Mr. Speaker and members of the House, it's really with a heavy heart that I support this legislation because many of the comments coming from the other side of the chambers are true. It's really true. The morale among teachers is very low. There's no question about that. We're having trouble attracting really quality people into the occupation. I'm very, very sensitive to that. My heart just goes out to young people that want to go into the profession, but they don't see too much promise in job security, pay allowances, and so forth. But I still think we need to keep perspective on just what's happened in our state in the last few years. The other day I took a journey along Highway 95. This is a sentimental trip, just on my own. Just got in the car, traveled 95, visit the little towns along Highway 95, Cambridge, Midvale, these little places. I love the little towns of Idaho. I love Mackay. We talked about Mackay and what's happened to Mackay. I love that. I love that little town. I fish in the fall of the year in Mackay. Go out on the streams, there's no one there. I mean, I love to fish in the fall. But the little town is winking out. The number of empty buildings in Mackay. They have this marvelous Art Deco theater, Art Deco movie theater. They keep it preserved, immaculately preserved, but it's empty. They keep the marquee in perfect condition, ready to proclaim the next movie that will never arrive. Oh, this is struggling, these little communities, and often the most secure job in the community is a school teacher. They're the ones that have the most secure job. And I don't know, I just go talking to the gentleman from 8 and his business for years, generations. He's had this farm supply business. And to see how he's struggling, I think he had 8 employees, down to 1, his wife, basically now while he's here. It's tough times. And I don't know. It's very difficult. And our school boards, they have to control. They're the elected representatives of the people. I mean, I love the teachers' union, but they're not responsible to the voters. And we've got to give those school districts, those boards, the authority they need to deal. The threshold by financial emergency is too high. They need to have something more than the financial emergency legislation that we provided. The threshold is too high. They need to have latitude there. So it's with a heavy heart I vote for this, and I take the flack home from my fellow teachers, friends that I've had for years. But I know I travel 95. I see what's happened in this state. Little towns. I love these little towns, and I just hope and pray that the vitality will come to these little towns. My good seatmate talks about this. If we had the lumber mills going again, get these mills going again, start harvesting some trees rather than to grow them to burn them. Bring vitality to our little towns. Let us use our land. The 2/3 is locked up by the federal government. Won't let us use our resources. So, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members of the House.
Is there further debate? Good lady from District 31.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate in favor of the bill. These reductions can't happen mid-year. They have to be done in negotiations and at that time, so both parties realize what is going on. In the bill on page, I think it's page 2, and continues on to page 3, it gives what's called letter F, and it has to happen no matter what else happens in the bill. This has to happen to a school district to be able to declare a financial emergency. And it states in here that, bear with me, it's on 2 pages. The school district's unrestricted general fund balance, which includes funds restricted by state or federal law, and considering, let's see, excuse me. Anyway, it says that you have to have a fund balance of less than 5% of your budget. And why would you want to do that year after year to be able to declare a financial emergency as a as a manager, as a school board member trying to manage a school district, you aren't able to have that much, you aren't able to put any money in there so that eventually you can have a solvent school district. The financial emergency requires you to have your funds way down. But as a manager, wouldn't you want to make sure that you could put money in there little by little so that you can have a solvent school district? And this bill will allow the districts to manage what they need. And these decisions are not made in a vacuum. There are other faculties that come into this at different points, things that happen in the district. And yes, we want school boards and teachers and the employees of the district to sit down at the table and decide what is best for the district. This does not restrict that. It just gives them the ability to do that. When Mackey School District came, their teachers had agreed to do things to help that district stay solvent. But what is in law right now really did not allow them to be able to do that, and that's why they came and asked for the help. But there are other school districts across the state that need this help also. They did pass levies this year, but it's because the community said, we want to help, and we want to give those boards all the options and the tools that they need to be able to do what the voters in their district have asked them to do. And with that, I would ask your green light.
Is there further debate? For what purpose does a good lady from District 18 rise?
To debate for the second time.
Does any member wish to debate for the first time? Good lady from District 8.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I truly thought that maybe everything had been said that we could possibly say, and this pretty much reflects itself yearly, annually. I'm a country mouse, and we keep passing legislation that benefits the city mouse, and us little country mice have to go home and make out the best way we can. And I think the gentleman from, if I got the number right, 33, did an excellent job of explaining why I support this bill. First of all, I do live in Custer County. I'm very familiar with Mackey, and with, of course, the school district or the schools right in Chalice. Now, what you have to remember is we hear all the time over here, local control, and that's after the feds pound on us and after we go out and pound on people, and then we say, oh, local control. This is sine die day. I'm going to go home here pretty quick. I'm going to vote on a school board, and I'm going to look at my circumstances, and I'm going to say, can I afford this bond, this supplement, this levy? Local control. We can control ourselves locally if we are given the opportunity. And there are just as many people in my home county who lost a job because of the recession. Maybe if they kept a job, they had to take a cut in salary. We've begun to single out who's the good guy and the bad guy in the world of work. But I will tell you this, if you don't put the baby in the wrong bathwater, he won't get thrown out. And so, Mr. Speaker, I ask you once again, please let my people go.
Is there a gentleman from 14?
To debate for the first time.
Gentleman has the floor.
Good members of the body, I appreciate your indulgence. I know we're all ready to go home, and I promise I'll make it quick. I wanted to maybe just clarify a couple of things very quickly. It was suggested that we pass legislation that lowers the threshold to declare an emergency. Unfortunately, that legislation does not go into effect until July of this year. This legislation goes effect. It has an emergency clause. It goes into effect immediately. That's important. We've heard of the example of Mackey. Unfortunately, that story is replicated throughout our state. There's been some suggestion that we are not doing all that we can for our schools, and I don't think that's accurate. Last year, General funds dollars for education increased 4.6%. This year, 2.2%. This is in a recession, folks. We're increasing the money. Good colleague talked about first dollars back in, have been restored to education. We're doing all that we can. Let me tell you what this really boils down to. Our school districts right today have one option, the nuclear option, fire someone. They want the ability, the teachers want the ability to say, that's okay, we want to work for a little less so that we can have our 16 teachers at Mackey. We're willing to do that. The districts only have the nuclear option today. They want the option to keep the 16 teachers. Please allow them to do that.
Is there further debate for the first time? Gentleman from 8.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A lot's been said about Mackey, that is in my district. And those patrons stood up to the plate, and they committed themselves to $150,000 per year supplemental levy for the next 2 years. The administration in that district, they agreed to cut expenses by $150,000. Of that, the teachers came and volunteered and said, we'd like to take a 5% pay cut. We don't want you to reduce staff. That amounted to $36,000 taken out of the salary base in Mackey. But they can't do that without this legislation. Now, what's gone on in the promises made to our rural schools, made in 1906 with the reserve of the forest, was that we would always have 25% fund for schools and roads if they could reserve that and create our national forest. Our national forests are our treasures, and that's why new management of our public lands is going to be so important. It's for issues just like this. And Mr. Speaker, if I could refer to a letter from the Intermountain Region of the Forest Service dated March 21st, 2013.
Is there an objection? The gentleman may refer to the letter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This letter refers to sequestration, and they had been reducing the amount of the secure rural schools money each year. This was to temporarily replace the promise made in 1906 when we reserved the land to the forest of the 25% of the gross that was ever received off the public domain. In this letter right here, mandated sequestering the amount is subject to a 5.1% reduction. That has to be returned to the federal treasury. Now, we are going to work out ways that this is not going to have to, I'm going to be honest, not going to have to come out of the schools. We're going to take it from other locations. I'm still actively involved with this issue. But the point being, this is where the future lies for our rural schools in Idaho. They don't have the tax base, they don't have the promise made, and they need this latitude of this legislation in order to keep their doors open and preserve what identity these small communities have. And I ask for your support of this Senate Bill 1040.
Is there further debate for the first time?
Thank
The
you.
lady
Mr. Speaker,
from District
permission?
18 for the second time.
Thank you. I'm a native Idahoan, and I don't know that you guys know, but I grew up in Notice and Marsing, Idaho, and believe me, it doesn't get more rural than that. So when we talk about this, you know, rural communities need this, let me tell you what it's like in rural communities when you're trying to get a math teacher or a special ed teacher or some highly trained teacher. It's very difficult to attract them to these smaller areas. And this is only going to make that worse, believe me. I've heard that, you know, Mackey needs this and our other rural areas need this. They already have the tools. We've given them the tools. Yes, they have to declare a financial emergency. It's not that difficult. It's possible. Teachers then can say, cut my salary back. Let it go through the negotiation process. Let the teachers decide. All the districts have to do is declare a financial emergency, and this can happen. But I believe this bill hurts rural Idaho. I know it hurts teachers. I think it becomes more difficult to attract teachers to smaller school districts. And I've heard over and over again that we have done so much for education in this state and that we've done all we can. And I know that this body has worked hard to find sufficient funds, but let me remind you that corrections, they received a 7% increase, while we did not do that well for education here in Idaho. There's more to be done, but this is not the way to do this. School districts have the ability and the flexibility to declare a financial emergency. Teachers can then say, please reduce my salary by 5%, but to pass a law that requires a trigger of, are you paying more than the salary-based apportionment from the state, and if you are, you can impose this, that's just wrong, and it's not going to attract teachers and keep them here in Idaho. Please vote no.
Is there further debate for the second time? Hearing none, would the good lady from District 9 care to close the debate?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much, members of the House. We have heard a lot of heartfelt debate on this subject. Teachers have good jobs compared to those who have no jobs. And in many places in Idaho, we have folks with no jobs who are still struggling to keep their homes and their businesses and pay their property tax to support their local schools. I want to remind you that those elected school boards are elected by voters to do their very best that they can, just as they elect legislators. Those boards must balance their budgets and protect both their staff and their property taxpayers. The real nuclear option is closing the district's doors, and that is exactly what places like Mackay is facing without a bill like this. We have hamstrung the school boards and the teachers to be able to come to agreement there. Mackay is down to their last dollars, and in 2 years, they will be closing their doors. They will have all their reserves spent, and they will have no other option. So I would ask that you would support Senate Bill 1040. Thank you.
The debate is closed. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1040 as amended pass the House? The clerk will unlock the machine and the members will cast their votes. Has every member voted?
That's great.
Does any member wish to change his vote? The clerk will lock the machine and record and read the pairs.
The pair at the desk is Representative Clark votes nay and Representative Harris votes aye.
The roll call shows 47 aye, 21 nay, 2 absent excused. Senate Bill 1040 as amended has passed the House. Is there correction to the title? Hearing none, the title is approved and Senate Bill 1040 as amended will be returned to the Senate. The gentleman from District 14.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the Speaker appoint 2 committees, one to wait upon the Governor and one to wait upon the Senate to notify them that the House is ready to adjourn sine die.
Thank you, good gentleman. The committee to notify the Governor will be Representatives Raybould, Lurcher, and Pence. The committee assigned to notify the Senate will be Representative Collins, Henderson, and Burgoyne. The committees may be dismissed. The House is still in order. Without objection, the House will advance to the 11th order of business, third reading of bills and joint resolutions. The House is at the 11th order. Gentleman from 14.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the remaining bill on the third reading calendar, Senate Bill 1133 as amended, hold its place on the third reading calendar.
You've all heard the unanimous consent request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, so ordered. The House will be at ease while we wait for the return of the two committees.
No. Mr. Speaker.
House will be in order. Gentleman from 14.
Mr. Speaker, the committee waiting upon the governor, the Senate has returned and will report.
Representative Collins.
Mr. Speaker, we went to the Senate. We found 3 senators and the pro tem, and we informed them.
Thank you, good representative. The committee may be dismissed.
We didn't wait for it.
Mr. Speaker, the committee waiting upon the governor has returned and will report.
The gentleman from District 32.
Mr. Speaker, will your committee to wait upon the governor? Visited with the governor for a moment, and he expressed his gratitude for our hard work this year, wished us well over the interim, and get ready for better and bigger things for next year.
Thank you, good. Thank you, committee. You may be dismissed. The House will now advance without objection to the 15th order of business. Are there announcements? The House will now advance to the 16th order of business, adjournment. The House is at the 16th order. Good gentleman from District 14.
Mr. Speaker, point of personal privilege before announcement.
The good gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. It's been a good year. We thank you as leadership team for all your hard work and for all your support. I personally want to thank you for your concern and help in regards to my family and some of the issues going on there. We look forward to meeting with you again next year. If there's anything you need in the interim, please let us know what we can do to help you. With that, Mr. Speaker, I move that the House of Representatives of the first regular session of the 62nd Idaho Legislature adjourn, sine die.
The gentleman from District 6.
Mr. Speaker, I second that motion.
You've all heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the first regular session of the 62nd Annual Legislative Session is adjourned, sine die.
Welcome to Idaho in Session, Legislature Live, the House channel. Idaho in Session is sponsored by the Idaho State Broadcasters Association, the J.A. and Catherine Albertson Foundation, Union Pacific Foundation, Idaho Association of Counties, Idaho Cable Telecommunications Association, Association of Idaho Cities, and your contributions to the Idaho Public Television Endowment.
Thank you.